Fantastic. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Jeffrey Beta. I work with the Sephardic Community Alliance. We're the sponsors for today's event. It's really great to welcome all the students across three of our great community high schools together for such an important event. We have Hillel, Flatbush, and Mag and David joining us in this important conversation. It's an honor to be joined by Natan Sharansky and Gil Troy, who recently co-wrote the new book, which you all have and have read, Never Alone, Prison, Politics, and My People. Natan is a hero of the Jewish people. When he began his fight on behalf of Soviet Jews to be free, he paid a very heavy price. He spent 9 years in Soviet prison before winning his freedom. But his fight did not end there. After his release, he and his wife, Avital, continued their efforts to free the remaining Jews stuck inside the Soviet Union. Natan went on to spend 9 years in the Israeli government, then another 9 years as head of the Jewish Agency. He's a great humanist, Zionist, and activist. Natan's story is a real-life example of the power of the Jewish spirit to triumph over evil. Natan embodies the best of what it means to be a responsible caretaker of our shared history and an active investor in our shared destiny as Jews. Gil is a professor of history and has written many books on Zionism and American presidential history. Gil, you have so beautifully knitted together Natan's extraordinary life experiences into what looks like a book, but actually feels and reads like an invitation to the reader to explore their history and identity as Jews. It really reads more as a call to action that we should explore and embrace our identity as being part of something larger than ourselves, and to enjoy the benefits of being a part of that larger thing, but also taking on the responsibilities that come with that. So thank you, Natan and Gil, very much for joining us today. Natan, I just need to start off by saying you're a personal hero of mine. I remember writing letters to Brezhnev in elementary school, hoping they would free you. So meeting you is actually the second time we met. You may not remember the first time, but you were an inspiration to me in my decision to serve in the IDF. We met again once flying back from Israel. We sat next to each other and I looked at you and you knew I knew who you were and you knew it. And I said, you know, I'm gonna let this man have peace and quiet. I so badly wanted to talk to you. So I had the window seat, you had the aisle. So I did not use the men's room for 11 hours straight because I didn't want to disturb you. And I didn't want to talk to you. So it's really great to be able to talk to you personally. It's a dream come true. My first question is to you. You were born in the Soviet Union, obviously a totalitarian regime. You were mostly cut off from the outside world. You were not permitted to leave. You spent 130 days straight in solitary confinement, just incredibly difficult circumstances. Yet you say that you never felt alone. So can you explain and describe how discovering, exploring, embracing your Jewish identity created a connection so powerful that it could not disconnect you even through the walls of a Soviet prison?
Oh, thank you, Jeff, and welcome from Jerusalem. Shalom. First of all, thank you for keeping my privacy in the airplane. Not everybody does it. Second, thank you for writing to Brezhnev. Of course, I didn't receive your letters, but KGB received. And it is these letters of hundreds of thousands and demonstrations and pressure and so on, which made Soviet Union to let me out and then to let other Jewish out and then to fall apart under the pressure of Jewish people. As to going back to those years, I grew having nothing Jewish in my life. That was the policy of Soviet Union. There was no language, no tradition, no religion, no Brit Milah, no Bar Mitzvah, no Hanukkah or Purim. And at the same time, there was one Jewish thing, a lot of anti-Semitism. And so there was nothing positive in this word, Jewish. It was like you are born with some kind of disease and you have to know how to deal with this. And the way to deal with this is to have, to be the best in your profession and to succeed in spite of discrimination and anti-Semitism. And of course, there is no freedom, and you don't trust, don't believe in the ideology of the regime, but you know that you cannot talk about it because there is no value except of the value of physical survival. And then after 6-day war, when Israel entered our life in a very powerful way, and everybody around you looks on you and says how you guys did it, so you understand that for all these people, you're connected to Israel. And you want to understand why. And that's when I and many others started reading in the underground from the books which were received from Jewish American tourists mainly. We started reading about ourselves, in fact, about history, which started not from the Bolshevik Revolution, not from communist regime, but which starts from Exodus from Egypt and continues for 1,000 years. And it's such a great history. And you want to be part of it. And then you look at these Jews, soldiers near the Western Wall at the moment of liberation, and you understand they're 20 years old. They're over the same age as you. You also can be part of this history. And all these Jews who are coming as tourists and saying, oh, my father is also from Odessa, like your father. We are family. We really want to help you. And suddenly you understand that all these Jewish people all over the world, they're all from Odessa. They all want to help you. And so if you only will make some twists in your mind, you can be, that can be your history. This can be your people. And it can be your state, which is ready to send airplanes to the end of the world, but to protect you. So that's how you discover your identity. And when you discover your identity, suddenly you have strength to speak your mind freely, because suddenly there are values which are bigger than your personal life. You want to be part of these people. And then when I became, as a result, I became activists who fought for my rights, for rights of other Jews, and then simply for human rights. That's how I became spokesman of Zionist movement and human rights movement. And then, because there were a few years of this struggle before I was arrested and sent for many years to solitary confinement, to punishing cell and so on. But I already knew this power of solidarity of Jewish people, all those tourists from America who were trembling from fear when they were taking our letters, which they had to smuggle to American congressmen. But when you say, okay, don't do it, we will find another way. They said, no, you don't understand. We are not doing a favor for you. We also want to be part of this struggle for liberation of Jewish people. So you feel this power of solidarity, and you understand that all what KGB is telling you, that you're abandoned, that you're alone, that people are afraid to mention our names, that is the end of Zionism and the end of Jewish movement in Soviet Union, you know that they're lying. You have no connection to the outer world. You have year and a half interrogation, threats to be sentenced to death, but you know that they're lying. You feel this, that power of solidarity of Jewish people, which you feel through 1,000 years and through these 1,000 miles, and that's what gives you strength to continue being a free person, also in the KGB prison.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you touched there on the diaspora relationship with Jews around the world, and also its relationship with Israel, that they'll send planes around the world to rescue you. I'll just give you a quick story. When I went to serve in the army and I showed up on the base, the first thing the Israeli soldiers would ask me is, "What are you doing here?" And I thought, well, what, don't you know what I'm doing here? And part of I guess what I was doing there was reminding some of them what they were doing there, and they in turn sort of remind the diaspora how important we are to Israel. Israel sometimes feels like this powerful, self-assured country that maybe doesn't need so much of our help. And I think we need to recognize how much the diaspora has to give to Israel, and Israelis need to better understand how much they offer us in the diaspora. They never experienced living outside of Israel necessarily. And you talk about belonging to, you personally belonging to Israel and the diaspora at the same time, and having three very unique perspectives of that relationship. One from a jail cell in the Soviet Union, one as an Israeli minister in the government, and of course, as the head of the Jewish Agency. So can you tell us, you talk about how the diaspora and Israel complement each other. We're not carbon copies of each other. So how are we the same? How are we different? And what are the different roles and responsibilities that we have to one another?
Well, I think that's the question which Gil and I discuss a lot in this book. In fact, we feel that after the stage when we were ignoring one another, meaning that there was a small group of Zionists who dreamed about Jewish state and who went to Palestine to build it, but for majority of Jews of the world, for many distinguished Jewish and religious leaders, Zionism practically didn't exist. And then there was period after the awful Holocaust, there was period when we were saving one another. Like Israel, American Jews felt that they have to save their poor child, the state of Israel. And Israel felt that we are saving the future of Jewish people by building our state. And we feel that now we are at the third stage when we really need one another. When the question is not how we can save you, but the question is how we need you. It is American Jews who discovered that in order to strengthen their identity, they have to send their children to Israel. That's how Birthright was born, and we are writing about it. On the other hand, it is Israel which discovers again and again that just even when we are a startup nation, we are not poor relative anymore. We are so successful, we cannot take our existence for granted, and our enemies will fight us day and night. And we don't have any better ally, part of our family, than world Jewry. And really, I feel that whenever I'm in Futsot and diaspora, and I was almost in every community in the world, I feel very strongly myself a proud Jew, a proud Israeli, because Israelis are those who are taking responsibility for the future of Jewish people, who are building this Jewish home. And this pride of being Israeli is very deep. I felt it in Moscow, definitely I have it in Israel. On the other hand, speaking to Israelis, I very often feel myself Jew of diaspora, because I think the fact what it is to be Jew by choice, because Jews of diaspora, they are not Jews simply because they were born Jews. They are making this decision every day. They can change their mind. And they're Jews by choice. To feel what it is responsibility for one another when you're a minority amongst others. And how it is important, what it is that we are responsible for one another. So really, we have a lot to give to one another. And at the same time, during all our battles and the mutual feeling of betrayal, we describe some of these big conflicts between the Jews of diaspora and the government of Israel or Israelis. What we felt very strongly, and I felt because I could look at it from different perspectives, that we all want to continue our journey through 1,000 years as one Jewish family, with all our differences. And that's very important to remember, that what unites us in the end is this feeling of the family. And no doubt that Israel can give a lot, but Israel also has an obligation to do a lot, to be home for all the Jews of the world. Well, Gil definitely can speak a lot also about it.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Natan one question, and then I have a few questions for Gil. Natan, you talked about how there were people that were smuggling letters to you and other things and putting themselves at risk to be a part of this. You also had diplomats and powerful people and governments all working on your behalf to try to free you and to better the condition of Soviet Jewry at the time. When you were finally free, and you and your wife Avital were continuing the struggle, it's very interesting. I found this quote. So of all those powerful established organizations of adults that are well connected, your wife told you our first allies are the students, best represented by the SSSJ, the Student Struggle for Soviet Jewry. You need these grassroots activists to get things started, unquote. She did not say, first we need the rich, first we need the powerful, first we need the connected, first we need the diplomats, first we need the adults. She said, first we need the students. So you're speaking to hundreds of students today. Can you tell them why? What is it that college activists were able to do that all these adults, all these powerful organizations were not able to accomplish?
Look, we could not survive even one day of our struggle in the Soviet Union if it wasn't the struggle of all the Jewish people from the very beginning. After all, Soviet Union was a dictatorship which killed tens of millions of their own citizens in order to keep everybody under control. And here is a group of few hundred Jews who suddenly declared that they want to leave the Soviet Union. They were insisted their right to live as Jews and to go to Israel. Of course, it could never happen if from the very first day, the world Jewry by their struggle didn't connect the most important interests of the Soviet Union with our fate. But how the world Jewry was mobilized? In fact, Elie Wiesel in 1965 visited the Soviet Union and then called the world Jewry. It cannot be that we will be silent when these Jews, it can be another Holocaust. These Jews simply will disappear. They will be forced to be assimilated by this awful power. But already in 1964, there was organized the first demonstration. 4 students from Columbia University decided that we cannot be silent. Establishment can continue to be afraid, to calculate whether it will irritate the government, whether we should start being public or not. Students said, we are not going to wait. We will, and that's how the first demonstration on the 1st of May 1964 was organized. And the same day, the student struggle of Soviet Jewry was born. With the time, very quickly, in fact, many people in the establishment, Jewish organization, felt ashamed, felt that it's impossible, that they have to speak out. But if the activists, the students, the young, with their passion, with their not calculating too much what will be the results, we are not ready to take a lead, who knows how long the silence would continue. And that's what always we felt in our struggle. I can say that even the last battle to free Soviet Jewry, the great demonstration in Washington, 250,000 people came to Washington to demonstrate. The Jewish organizations mobilized all their muscles, all the airplanes. There was unbelievable logistical operation, which nobody could do but establishment. But for the struggle for this demonstration continued for a year. When I first raised this question, the establishment organizations were very hesitant. They were not sure that it is possible to bring so many Jews in winter to Washington. They were saying maximum 18,000 Jews in Washington can come in winter to Washington. I went to students. I spoke in Flatbush Yeshiva. I spoke in dozens of American universities. Enthusiasm was very big. And after this organization, the youth was mobilized and said, we want to do it. After this, the establishment organization did. So KGB tried to discourage me in prison, saying, who is behind you? So after all, only a bunch of students and housewives, and we are KGB. And I think they gave a great definition to our movement, because it is the army of Jewish students and Jewish housewives who led the struggle, and all the Jewish world followed them.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you. Gil, Natan talks about, and you write about doublethink in your book, the idea that you're thinking one thing and you're saying something different, maybe sometimes even the opposite of what you believe, in order to avoid finding yourself in trouble, in various kinds of trouble. So I want to move to the college campuses today, which of course are not like the Soviet Union, but nevertheless today we find them to be something less than fully free. There's a fair amount of doublethink that we see happening on campus. And you may not get disappeared in the physical sense that you may have in the Soviet Union, but you could get canceled, which is sort of a metaphorical disappearing of somebody. So my question is, Gil, as an American, as a Jew, as a renowned academic, you have an insider's perspective on what's happening on college campuses with respect to anti-Israel and anti-Semitic sentiment. So I read in the book that Natan described to Ariel Sharon, I believe he said that the future of the Jewish people is happening on the battlefield of the campuses. So Gil, can you give our students today a preview of what this quote unquote battlefield looks like? What kinds of things will they be hearing? What sorts of beliefs will they be encountering and needing to counter? And then just some specific, maybe strategies and tools about how to think about it and how to approach the environment on campus that you'll describe for them.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And thank you to all of you on the call. I want to thank the Sephardic Community Alliance. I want to thank the three amazing schools, Flatbush Yeshiva, Hillel Yeshiva, and Magen David, that are coming together in really the symbol of Jewish unity. That it doesn't matter, you might be in Deal, New Jersey, you might be in Brooklyn, I might be a Queens boy, the two of us are sitting in Jerusalem, and nevertheless, we find a way to put our differences aside and unite. And that's the power of Never Alone, and that's the power of being a part of this Jewish people. I also want to give a special salute to our teacher heroes, because we know how hard this period has been for all of us, but to continue to be a teacher in high school with all the challenges of COVID is not easy. And so thank you all for carving out this really special moment for us. You sit there and you write a book, and Natan and I went over each word and every paragraph and chapters and how do we organize it. And the notion that hundreds of you on this call sat and read the book and engaged with their ideas. And we don't even need you to necessarily agree with everything. We just want to have the conversation. And that actually gets to the heart of the question that you asked, Jeff. Think about it. I would like to give you guys homework. I want every single one of you who has a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent alive, who actually made the move from a totalitarian culture, from the Soviet Union, from Syria, from Morocco, and came to America and brought the family. And as a reason why you have freedom, I want you to pick up the phone tonight and call them and thank them. And I also want those of you who might be going to a Jewish day school to thank your parents to giving you that gift, because Natan said he didn't have that gift. And so you get that gift. You get the gift of belonging. You get the gift of being a part of the Jewish people. You get the gift of a Jewish education. You get the gift of American freedom. And you come to college campus, not every college campus, but too many college campuses. And instead of understanding that, wow, this is our opportunity to learn from one another, left and right, pro-Israel and anti-Israel, more religious and secular. Instead, the ugly culture we're seeing today in American politics, online, in the media, has now occurred on the college campus. Now look at me, I'm a case of arrested development. I love the university. I got to campus and I never wanted to leave. I became a professor. I don't like to come and bash the university. But indeed, as you said, what was happening in the Soviet Union, which was this totalitarian dictatorship based on lies, where you knew, I might think one thing, but I can't admit it, and that's called doublethink, is now being translated, not from the bosses, not from the president of the university, not from the president of the United States, not from the authorities, but from people who shame you on Twitter, people who bully you from the left and from the right, and create this cancel culture. And so you come to college campuses, and instead of being able to learn, to explore, to be critical, you have to shut up. You have to be careful. You have to guard your popularity. And it especially happens when it comes to Israel. Again, not on every college campus. But when it does happen, you're going to have a moral choice to make. You're going to have to choose. Do I follow the example of Natan Sharansky? Do I follow the example of my parents and grandparents and the heroes who brought me to America? Do I make sure that we really get our money's worth through the college experience by asking questions, by standing up, by being an honest broker? And I call this Pilates. Strengthening the core, having a strong sense of Jewish identity, having a strong sense of liberal democracy, wherever you stand politically. I'm talking about believing in the core ideals of free speech and freedom of thought and freedom of religion or not. And the fact that it's happening over Israel and it's being fought over Israel is one of the great tragedies of our time. So that, in very short, is the invitation to you to understand that it might get difficult sometimes, but know you're never alone. It might get challenging sometimes, but know there are other people who are going to have your back. And at the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror every single day and not just say, did I wear something fashionable, but also say, did I do the right thing? And that's how you sleep well at night, by standing up for core ideals, by standing up for your people, by standing up for community. And by doing that, you really save the college campus from itself, and you save the double thinkers from themselves, and you save the bullies from themselves.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gil. I hope the students are taking notes. I think that is a tremendously useful depiction and advice for our students. Thank you. Natan, our high school seniors, many of them take a gap year in Israel. Many of them don't. Some of them, probably many of them, are on the fence, thinking about whether they should do it, not do it. I know you've been very involved in Birthright and building the Masa program to be an incredible thing. So can you speak to those students who are on the fence about spending a year in Israel or not? What advice would you give them? How should they be thinking about it? What could they expect to gain from it? What should they hope to contribute?
Well, I can say that whatever is your education, whatever is a tradition which you got from your family, whatever is the depths of religiosity, there is nothing like Israeli experience, nothing. And I have to say, I loved Masa. I personally, when I was chairman of Jewish Agency, I spent a lot of efforts to develop individual Masa plans practically for every Jewish student in the world. You want to be a dancer, you want to be specialist in physics, you want to be a historian, we'll find the way to build a program around your interests, but you will spend some essential time in Israel. And why I was doing, because I had many conversations. I liked to speak to Masa students after a few months of they being in Israel. And there are people on the left, people on the right, and very religious and secular. And usually they're becoming strong in their convictions in Israel. Nobody really changes from one political view to the other or from one level of religiosity. Why? Because they can always find in Israel people, sometimes with a lot of authority, who are exactly in their camp. But after discussing it, usually you hear a lot of criticism because those who are on the right feel that Israel is too much on the left and vice versa. And those who are religious say, why you're such a secular state? And those who are secular say, you really became one big yeshiva. So it's okay. But then when you leave it and say, okay, now tell me, what is Israel for you now? And it doesn't matter what are their views. They all feel we discovered the family. As one girl said, here when taxi driver says to me, have a good Shabbat, after he interrogated me about my fathers and grandfathers, I know he really wants me to have a good Shabbat. When the taxi driver in New York tells me, have a nice day, he doesn't really mean it. Because if the other said to me, here I discovered the place where I am loved, not for my views, but for my being a family. There is no way to feel the depth and all the openness and the richness of your Jewish family than to be in Israel. Of course, there are a lot of good communities, and I spent a lot of time in many Jewish communities in the world. Israel is the place where you rediscover in a minute that you have that you are really ancient nation. And at the same time, in a minute, you discover that you are startup nation, that you are connected to the most interesting developments of this world, the most interesting ideas. So don't miss this unique opportunity. Gap year is the best year to spend in Israel. Of course, insist that you want to get to the program, which will be of interest for you also from the point of your professional, intellectual interests. And there are many different programs. But when you choose this program, don't forget that while you came to Israel, that is the opportunity to improve your Hebrew. And unfortunately, I know students who spend all the year speaking only English. Why to do it? What is the sense? You live with the other guy from America or from Britain and you speak only English. Don't waste your time. Use this opportunity to start speaking Hebrew. And my Hebrew is not very good, but that's a great way to get deep in the Jewish world. And also travel and speak to as many different people as possible. That's the way to find out what a variety we are, how different are our interests. And at the same time, you will understand why we Jews are leading in so many movements in the world about human rights, about the value of the life, about personal dignity. And you'll find out that all this starts from Israel, from your own identity, and not what you will hear later on the universities about the opposite, about that it is something absolutely disconnected, that or they're universal values or there are Israeli Jewish values. It's all very deeply connected.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. We're going to go to student questions in just 1 minute. Gil, just as long as we have you on, I have a quick question. We're running a little behind, but I can't miss the opportunity to ask you. You've written 9 books on presidents. We have an administration change here. You're a Zionist and academic. We saw what a difference a president can make in the tone of the world when he said, when President Reagan, for example, called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Without getting too political, just Trump and the last 4 years, and now Biden the next 4 years, what do you expect to happen on college campuses in the next 4 years? Will it become a more or less hostile place for pro-Israel, fighting anti-Semitism on campus? What's your prediction?
I'm an optimist because David Ben-Gurion and Golda Meir said you can't be a Zionist and a pessimist, and I'm a Zionist. But I have to say, regardless of whether you love Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, I don't want to get into that debate. But the fact that so many college students hate Donald Trump, and the fact that Donald Trump gave Israel such an enthusiastic bear hug has made what I call the toxic embrace, the poison hug. And his enthusiasm for Israel, his recognition of Jerusalem as our capital, the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem, which, by the way, George McGovern and Jimmy Carter, liberal Democrats in the 1970s were calling to do, and Bill Clinton called to do, and Ronald Reagan called to do, but only Donald Trump did it. Donald Trump's role in facilitating the Abraham Accords, all those ties to Israel have now led many college students to say, in a false kind of distortion of the mathematical transitive verb, saying, if Donald Trump loves Israel and I hate Donald Trump, therefore I have to hate Israel. And unfortunately, I'm hearing it not just among non-Jewish college students, but also among many Jewish students. And that's why it's really important that we do 2 things. One, we go back to bipartisanship as a value. One of the great gifts that Israel has given to the United States, not just the United States has given to Israel, but Israel has given to the United States, is a healthy democracy needs some issues on which left and right can agree. And for decades, Republicans and Democrats competed in presidential campaigns to say, who's more pro-Israel? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump in 2016, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama in 2012. You can have your own opinions, but they were each trying to say, I am pro-Israel. And so we have to go back to that as a value, because America needs some issues on which we can agree. And we have to be the force for that. And when we hear Joe Biden, even if some of us might disagree with some of the things Joe Biden says, we shouldn't use the phrase anti-Israel if he's critical of Israel, but he fundamentally agrees with Israel's right to exist. There are so many people who are truly anti-Israel, who truly don't want the state of Israel to exist, that we shouldn't take somebody who maybe might not agree with our perspective. It's exactly what Natan was saying about everybody wanting to be exactly the same, and say, you know what, I might disagree with what he thinks about the settlements. I might disagree with his approach to Iran, but I know that this man truly believes in the right of Israel to exist and the right of the Jewish people to have a state. And so we have to be subtle, but be passionate, and don't give in. And the most important thing, don't shout about this. Talk about it. Personalize it. Share it with your roommates. Tell your personal story. The more we personalize Israel, the more we make it intimate, the more we make it ours. And then I say, I might hate Donald Trump and he might love Israel, but I like my roommate Bob or Jane, and he or she likes Israel, and so that makes a difference. And that's why, to pick up on what Natan was saying, you come to Israel on a gap year, you go then to college campus, and you tell stories, not just about the Jewish people and the big ideas of Torah, which are important, but about the little things, about the startup nation, about getting stuck in traffic, about going to bars and drinking responsibly once you've reached your drinking age, about enjoying the beaches, and you normalize, you humanize Israel. Look what's happening right now between the Gulf states and Israel. We're humanizing one another, and that's how you build real peace, and that's how you build the best PR.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Gil. So we're going to go to student questions now. I'm going to have to give this to Emily because from what I understand, as we're talking, some of the orders have changed in terms of who's asking what questions. So Emily, why don't you call on the students and we'll let the panelists answer.
Okay, sounds good. So the first question we're going to ask is from Hillel Yeshiva, from Saul Hakim. I understand he's in Mr. Kevin Cass's room. So if that classroom could please unmute themselves and take off their video, we'll restart the video, then we can get the question.
The video, oh, there we go.
Okay.
All the way the camera. Okay. Hi, so my name is Saul Hakim, senior in Hillel. Before I ask my question, I just want to thank Mr. Sharansky and Mr. Troy for taking the time out to speak to us. And I'd also like to thank Jeffrey Beta and everyone else at the SCA who made this possible. Now for my question. In your book, you detail your pursuit of science and knowledge as a young man. You were a careerist who sought to reach the top of, quote, scientific ivory tower. In many ways, the students here today can relate. After years of hard work, we'll now be entering college and pursuing our career goals. However, after the actions of Andrei Sakharov, you realized that a career was not enough and that you wanted to make your mark on history. What would you say to all the students here who want to make history? How could they do it, and what steps should they take?
Okay, well, thank you. Great question. First of all, there is nothing bad in desire to have a successful career in science or in anything else. In fact, it's very, very Jewish thing. We heard it from our parents, because you are Jew, you must be the best. That is the way of Jewish survival. And of course, and Jews really advanced science and medicine and many other fields. But what you discover, that if in order to have your career, you have to be double thinker, you have to lie, to say things in which you don't believe, sooner or later it will undermine also your creativity. As I was in the beginning of this scientific career, and here you see the number one scientist in Soviet Union writes, if we are not permitting people to express freely their thoughts, we will never have a modern advanced science. And then you are really ashamed that you're trying all your life to control things, not to say what you really believe in, only in order to have a good career. Isn't your inner freedom bigger value and bigger enjoyment than your career? And when you start speaking your mind freely, you understand that in fact there is no contradiction in your desire to be successful scientist and your desire to be a free person. Now, speaking freely your mind permitted me to reconnect with my identity. And here I want to say to everybody, if you believe in universal values, you believe in Tikkun Olam, you want to see our world better, it's a very hard work. And there is no other source of the strength than your identity, your family, your tradition, your history, and of course, and your home, Israel. The more you're connected to these sources, the more strength you will have to fight for the universal values. That's what I can tell you.
Great, thank you, Natan. Emily, do we have the
Yeah.
next question? Great.
So the next question is going to be from Mag and David, from Jacqueline Salman. She's speaking on behalf of Ruthie Mavara from room 501. If room 501 could start their video and unmute, that'd be fantastic.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I'm a senior at Mag and David. Okay. Your story is incredibly inspiring. You were constantly faced with challenge after challenge, from the Soviet prisons to political opposition. What kept you from giving up? What made you refuse to give in to the pain and anger you had every right to feel? What is it about Judaism and the land of Israel that had you seemingly defying the laws of human nature to accomplish your goals?
Oh, well, big question. No, thank you, Jacqueline. And I'll try to be very short, and I really want that Gil will add as the one who dealt a lot with these challenges too. Look, what I found, I lived without any identity, and there was no value except for the value of survival. And then I suddenly discovered that when you are, and I wanted to be free, of course. And then you discover that you have such unique history, and it's so easy simply to decide that that's your history. And you have such unique people with this unique power of solidarity who really want to help you. And you're so lucky that there is a state which says, I'm ready to do everything to help you. Suddenly that gives you a lot of strength. And I was also activist of human rights because I discovered my personal freedom, and I thought it's such a big difference to be a free person who speaks, who's not afraid to speak the mind, than to be Soviet slave, that even in prison you feel that you prefer to continue being a free person in prison than to be a slave in Soviet Union. But then when you're fighting for these values, then from where comes this source of believing in the value of human rights? It all comes from this idea that in the image of God created a man. So it all comes from our Jewish sources. And when I started reading, I was already 20-something when I started reading for the first time Jewish sources. I was surprised to find out that we are so lucky that we were born into the identity which gave, in fact, the base for this, for the modern civilization and for this appreciation of the people, what it is to be a free person. So yes, we are really lucky, not by being chosen, but that we have from our birth, we are given as a birthright this unique identity, which can help us to be strong personally, and also to fight for the basic values of the humanity. Gil, you want to?
The two questions, the two excellent questions link together, right? Because look, I'm like you guys. I grew up, okay, in Queens, but I was under tremendous pressure to have that perfect CV and that sky-high GPA and write that college essay which says that I, at the age of 17, am such a superstar that if this university or that university doesn't accept me, the whole world is going to fall apart. And I was lucky I got to Harvard, and I was lucky I stayed there at graduate school, and I saw how many people had this soul-crushing experience just from getting in, just from getting ahead. And I was lucky. I was part of this amazing network called the Jewish people. So just like Natan in the Gulag knew he was never alone, I, at Harvard University, knew I was never alone. And yes, we're very conscious of the fact that we say never again, we fight against the Holocaust, and we remember our Holocaust martyrs, but we also want to have a positive identity. We don't just want to be anti-Semites, we want to be pro-Jewish. And having that connection, having that family, having that thing called Israel, having that ability to connect to something bigger than myself and bigger than my headaches and my worries about my grades and about getting that, ideal grade on the next test, meant that I could find meaning. And the way you start making history, the way you start connecting, is by saying, I'm not looking to make history, but I'm joining history by looking to make meaning. And I'm joining history because the Jewish people are part of a 3,500-year-old conversation about who we can be, who we've been, and how we can make ourselves better how we can defend ourselves, and how we can make the world a better place. And so you're lucky. You have this amazing gift. And it's now upon you to take it and do with it what you want. Because you're not consumers, you're owners, every single one of you. And that is your birthright. And that is exactly what your parents have invested in through the Jewish education that you've had, and through all the experiences you've had, and through the freedom that you've gotten as a gift from the United States of America, and from your parents, grandparents, and the rest of us who fight hard for that freedom, even as we disagree about so many things.
Great. Thank you, Gil. Emily, let's get another question. Should be from
Yeah.
Flatbush. I don't think they got one yet.
Yes, Flatbush. The next one is from Sarah Richter. Sarah, whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a senior in Flatbush. Thank you for coming to speak to us today. My question for you would be, what advice would you give to the Uyghur Muslims in China who are being put into re-education camps and being stripped of their religion based on your experiences fighting a communist government?
Great question. First of all, thank you for expressing concern about Uyghurs, the Muslim minority, but there are also other minorities in China, under dictatorships in many other parts of the world. And I don't know if maybe you could read in Washington Post a few days ago my article about Jimmy Lai, leading a Hong Kong dissident who was just now arrested. And I had 3 conversations with him before he was arrested, giving him advices. But because he was preparing himself for the rest of his life in the prison in China. So first of all, those who are fighting for their national, religious, and human rights under the totalitarian regimes, they not only they are right in their struggle to be free people, but they have all the reason to hope that the free world will support them. And first of all, I'm saying it to the leaders of the free world and to us. Yes, it is our moral obligation to be with them and to be against these totalitarian regimes. And yes, we have to expect from our governments to take it into account in our policy, and definitely, first of all, from American government. As to those people, as long as they are true to their ideas of freedom, they should know that they have a lot of allies in the Jewish world, and not only in the Jewish world, all in the free world. And we have to make our best that it will be not the empty hope of them. We have to understand it needs a lot of sacrifice for them to fight for their right to have their faith and to have their national identity. And it demands from them a lot of sacrifices. And they have no other hope, but the hope that in the end, the leaders of the free world will be with them, will support them. Exactly when I was in prison and the president of the United States called the Soviet Union evil empire, it was unbelievable support. And it gave us a lot of strength and it gave us hope. So yes, I do expect from the leaders of the free world to call Chinese regime by its name and to behave accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natan. Thank you, Sarah, for that great question. Okay, I think I want to be respectful of the time. We needed to wrap by 11. It's 1 minute to 11. So I'd like to thank all the students today who participated via Zoom, and for all those that submitted the questions. I want to thank also the administrations at MDY, Flatbush, and Hillel for all their work in helping put together this multi-school event. And a special thank you to Ricky Novick. Without you, Ricky, none of this would have been possible. You really been doing incredible work. And of course,
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, Natan.
Thank you. Thank you.
My personal heroes, and Gil for sharing this, for putting together so beautifully his life experiences in a way that's actionable for young people today is an incredible accomplishment. And to both of you for investing your time and energy and future in these people, our youth, the future of the Jewish people. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to all the schools. and have an enjoyable rest of the day and stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Jeff. Well, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ricky. And thank you, students who ask such good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.